Hey, Duncan. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's so good to see you on our stage.
And so good to see you. And I've got my red design glasses on, especially.
Oh, thank you. I put my glasses on just for you, too. Amazing. I'm going to hop off the stage and I'm going to bring up our amazing panel. I hope you guys enjoy the future of design.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Right, let's make some introductions. I'm Duncan Bird, VP of Brand and Digital here at Fiverr. Struggling to know which thing to look at. So I've got multiple screens here. Welcome to the world of virtual conferencing. Thanks all for giving your time today. I know you're all super busy. Let's make some introductions. I'll do them as you appear on my screen, so not in any particular order. I have first Sally Walliner, design lead and product designer at Canva. Hi, Sally.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Thanks again for joining. I love that red pod behind you. Very design-led.
Thank you. I had to match the glasses.
Right. We were just chatting backstage about it being the law that you have to have red glasses. Zach Anisco, CEO at Dribble. Welcome, Zach. I'm jealous that you did the branding thing and design. Should have done that myself with a bit of Fiverr branding. Flo Lau joins us as the creative director at Shutterstock.
Hello.
Welcome. Lovely to meet you. Thanks for joining. And last but not least, Chris Wynn, CEO of Creative Market.
Great to be here.
So just to kick off this panel and get the topic going, we all know, and it's such a cliche to say it, but I'm going to hit the cliche button at the beginning of this, that the world's changing faster and in more ways than our brains can keep up with, both socially, technologically, environmentally, politically, and unfortunately economically. So in the midst of these shifts, I think it's true to say that designers have a crucial task of thinking about what our future will look like, how we build and interact with it. There are many challenges, not least that the way that we see each other now is through screens like the ones we're looking at, rather than being in an office or being in a conference room and having some lukewarm Perrier water in small glasses in front of us. So everything is just completely different, but I think as a species, we adapt to it surprisingly quickly. And I'd love to talk a little bit about how, as designers and design, what are those challenges? So will the current trajectory of design lead us to a better world? Will it plunge us deeper into our pool of problems? Are we redefining what better means? And who is truly benefiting from design as we look forward to 2021 and beyond? I mean, it's a whole load of stuff there. Who wants to kick it off? Let's start, Flo, as you're in my top right now, thanks to this technology. I've thrown a lot of stuff out there, but let's just get the conversation going with how these changes in the way the world is now are going to impact design.
Yeah, so great question. I mean, that's definitely a lot of things that we can talk about with that topic. I think we'll start with the remote work first, right? So I think right now with our team, I'm going to start with just Shutterstock. We're not really facing too drastic of a change from the way we work and the way we create. We always use stock anyway. I would have to say the designers and the creatives within our team has been more efficient than ever. We are missing the physical interaction and inspirations you get from seeing a subway ad during your commute or going to museums or pop-up exhibitions going together as a team. But I think right now we're definitely relying a lot more on social media and other digital mediums to get inspired, which I'll touch on later because that also leads to like an increased amount of digital content that our customers are demanding from us. So we're definitely doing a lot more work now. And I think for me, like for my own team, my expectation actually goes higher for the team because I realize that these days our customers are relying so heavily on stock content to provide the content that they need. So us as Shutterstock are always monitoring customer search data, look for spikes and trending topics, and then we surface the creating content to our customers, providing the end user the right content, and that's really crucial.
Thank you, Flo. Let's hand it over to Zach for some opening comments from your point of view, both personally from Dribble and just the world in general.
Yeah, I mean it's a crazy time for sure. For Dribble, we've been a remote team for 11 years. We don't have a headquarters, so that it's been a natural transition for our internal team. And what we're seeing in the macro environment is we're just seeing a lot more openness from companies, from small startups, 2-person agencies to Fortune 500, openness to hire remote, right? So I think this is going to be the big trend that's going to come out of this whole ordeal, is that hubs like New York and London and San Francisco will no longer be where everyone has to migrate to find work in the creative industry. You can work from anywhere in the world and build a thriving career. So
right. Thanks, Zach. Chris, you want to chip in with some opening thoughts on these crazy times?
Yeah, I mean, we've been mostly remote for the last 7-8 years at Creative Market. We had a headquarters in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and we wanted to kind of pick a lane and really focus on remote. So we made the transition a couple of years ago. And the thing I always say is it's different for every company. It's different for every team. There's different ways to be great at it. There's different trade-offs to think about. But I think right now, the big change is that people are sort of forced into exploring it and to trying to understand it. And I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of companies. It doesn't mean that some of these companies aren't going to go back to their sort of physical spaces. But I think even if those companies do go back, they're going to have a new strength in their organization of figuring out remote. And for us, I mean, we're biased, but we love it. It's been great for our team and for our community. I mean, we've got 31,000 shops in 210 different countries, adding really, really great content to the catalog. And I think it's a trend that's only accelerating. It's a trend that's been around pre-COVID, which is people interacting with other people in different parts of the world, getting access to design, having more diverse design content and experiences and voices. And I just think for all the, there's tough things happening right now in the world, but I think behind the scenes, if we're getting maybe a little better at talking to people from different parts of the world and getting exposed to each other because we've got all this remote technology, I think over kind of the bigger arc, there's a lot of good around the corner for sure.
I see a lot of heads nodding here, and if we were in a non-COVID world, we'd be able to see if our audience were nodding along with us, but it's impossible to tell. Let's hope they are. Let's pray. Sally, do you have any opening remarks you want to touch on about the changes in this wonderful world we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of a broader societal shift in the way that we work and the way that the world works now, is that the only constant is change. Especially generations coming up now have come up in a world where there is no certainty, there is not necessarily a clear path in work, and people who can adapt and people who can innovate and people who can take their skills to new problems and different fields and move really quickly are in the best position to make the most of everything that we're going through, or at least cope with it the best. And I think that entirely new way of thinking about work across the spectrum is especially relevant in design, because one of the exciting things about being somewhere like Canva is that the structure of the team makes us incredibly agile. And so being able to respond to events like this almost in real time is almost a necessity for any designer, content company or design company, just because you need to be able to respond to the way the world is changing at this ridiculously accelerated pace. So yeah, that's been the challenge and the excitement, I think, of what's been going on.
Great, thanks, Sally. Again, lots of heads nodding in our panel. I hope it's resonating with the people who've joined us for this. Just a question for everybody. on the panel, are there any examples that you guys have seen of interesting design that's adapted because of what's happening in the world, or examples of things that you've seen creatively that have appealed to you? Just throwing it open to all.
I think that it's been, it's been fascinating to see people in the event space adapt. Businesses that were running conferences and physical events. I have a buddy who runs a company that has backstage experiences with musicians and celebrities, and that's moved to Zoom. And so it's just been fun to watch people just rapidly, force of hand, move from this physical, traditional way of life that we've always known, and now we're jumping into digital experiences, and it's not so bad. I've been to a few of these conferences now that are done online, and tens of thousands of people. It's pretty cool.
I personally am quite impressed by so many brands out there reacting so fast to how the society is changing. So just this morning, I heard that Walmart has this summer camp thing going on. It's a virtual summer camp experience for kids where they have celebrities like Drew Barrymore entertaining your kids in front of the TV, and every day they have different programs. And just something like that is just really timely. Everybody needs it right now, especially those parents that have a job but also have toddlers at home. I think those kind of stuff is not only really beneficial for the brand, but also very beneficial for the customers and really understanding what the customers need. Another example that I recently came across is Slack developing tools that enhances customers' remote working experience, right? They want to replace emails and ultimately create a holistic working environment for users. So they recently announced Slack Connect, which allows users to connect with up to 20 different vendors and partners outside of your company. We all know that currently that's not really a thing for Slack. We're only allowed to communicate with your internal company partners. And then some other examples really is from the fashion side. Fashion brands like Zara and ASOS, they actually send products to models' home so that the models can take their UGC content product shots at home. And they turn out fine. They turn out great. They turn out amazing. So I think trends like this is probably going to last even after COVID, because they realize that they can do stuff faster and cheaper.
Right.
It's not particularly an adaptation, but I've loved watching the growth of the Animal Crossing community in the gaming space, because it was this a really timely thing where it came out just before the pandemic hit, and I've watched an entire culture develop around my friends, especially in countries like the Philippines, where they are completely locked down, vanishing entirely into a virtual world, and the creativity that's flourished in entire fashion industries and fashion economies that have sprung up there. Someone made a version of Canva inside Animal Crossing. Friends I know are making virtual versions of real life art exhibitions that normally happen outdoors in Australia. And it's just been a really wonderful explosion of sort of digital creativity and a way for people to escape from the grind of everything that's going on around them, which has been quite fascinating.
That's a really fascinating example, Sally. And as you were speaking, it kind of reminded me of, in case anyone couldn't tell, my accent's from Britain. Back in the Second World War, that amazing design of "Keep Calm and Carry On," which became a piece of kind of cultural creativity that people stuck on mugs and mouse mats and goodness knows what else, but at the time was like a call to action for the public and to try and calm people in a scary time. I wonder if some of the things that we're talking about will in the future start to be regarded as part of societal, as somebody said, and cultural kind of totems. Chris, any thoughts from you about things that have inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen similar trends of, when all this started, even on our supply side, we just saw a huge wave of people re-engaging on the platform. Shops, designers go through, different phases of their career. And we just saw an explosion of people picking up Procreate, grabbing their iPad or whatever they use to create. And I think it's, behind all of those creations are a lot of stories of people that are probably, in lockdown, in quarantine, in different parts of the world. And it's, being creative, whatever it is for you, being creative is a really important outlet. And even I think in stressful times, I mean, we've seen some of the best work being done, which is, it's amazing to see, especially, obviously the United States has had its challenges. And, back a few months ago, there were, I think, countries in Europe and Asia that were kind of at their peaks. And yet still, people in Italy, people in the UK coming out, creating things. It's really wonderful to see. And on the flip side of that is, to the point made earlier, a lot of brands having to react really, really quickly and just sort of reinvent, just like rip apart the marketing plan, rethink the whole thing, and react really quickly. And moving fast has been really important for those brands.
So I think what might be, or I hope will be interesting for people watching us have this discussion is not just the positive creativity that comes out of these unusual these unusual times, but what are the challenges that you're all facing, and how are you overcoming them? I mean, from my own perspective, one challenge is that I'm in this room looking into this camera all day, and not having that interaction physically does change things a little bit, and those conversations that occur outside of meetings and in between meetings. And then galvanizing teams. I'd love to hear from each of you what are the challenges that you face. I mean, I don't want to bring everybody down, but I think I'd love to better help our audience with overcoming some of these challenges.
Yeah, I mean, one thing for us that we've been really mindful of with the team is, even though we're an all remote company and Dribble's all remote company, being all remote but working during quarantine, it is different, even if it is the same, right? So like, I'm in the same space that I would be working in pre-lockdown. But I think what people are missing right now are those little interactions and those little moments. This is a personal aside, but one of my outlets when I'm working really hard all day, you run to the grocery store, you've got an errand, you drive somewhere, you go somewhere, you're out in the world. Those moments are really, really important for people's health. And I think, we've been really tried to be really, the team's working harder than ever, but we're trying to be very mindful of, don't think that it's the same just because it might seem the same. It is different right now. There's a lot more stress and anxiety in the world, and you've got to be very thoughtful about that. Whether you're working at a company, whether you're, independent contractor, whatever your situation is, you've got to be really thoughtful about that because it is different times, and I think it affects people in different ways.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, listening to you, Chris, that one of the things that's always attracted me to creative people and designers in particular is the interests that they have outside of their work as much as what they do in work. So galleries, music, etc., creativity in its broadest sense. It's increasingly hard to top up on that when you are not going to the Brooklyn Museum or going to Carnegie Hall or wherever it is, or MoMA. You happen to get your inspiration. Flo, I see you nodding a lot. How are you overcoming that?
I'm nodding a lot because I'm really agreeing on what everybody is saying. But again, as I touched on earlier, we are currently missing that physical one-on-one interactions and inspirations that you get from like going out as a team to a museums and stuff like that. But at the same time, we have to realize how lucky we are these days that like everything is digital. You can get so much inspirations and content through social media and just everything, read articles and stuff, which is why you guys touched on earlier that creativity is blooming right now. Everybody has a lot of time to really think and create stuff. And of course, as you mentioned, Duncan, some of the challenges that we have is very typical. Parents like myself are juggling with family, working at home with a toddler. Like, it's not easy. Like, I feel like with this COVID thing, you can either choose this or that, and there's really no in between, which makes it very challenging. And of course, burnt out too. Like, we're constantly on Zoom every day, every hour. And right now, a lot of our team members, including myself, are actually working much longer than just a typical 9 to 6 hours. So these are the stuff that we just kind of have to balance out. And of course, with COVID specifically, with Certified, because we weren't always a remote company. So once we make that switch after lockdown, everybody was just, we don't have home offices set up. So like, everybody is just scrambling, oh my God, getting our computer set up, getting our desk set up. But at the same time, we have to launch crazy marketing campaigns, because for the changing society, we have to come up with COVID-19 messaging and like come up with this new campaign to really support small businesses and all the businesses that really need to connect with the audience. So like, there was just a lot of scrambling. And again, I am constantly impressed by how our team handled it. But there was just a lot of changes a few months ago. So.
Right. Thank you. Sally?
Yeah, I think it's the same struggles everyone else has had. And one of the things we've been working on doing is building time for those moments of human connection into our meetings, into the way we interact, and into our schedule. So, for instance, we've been holding a more virtual online socializing events, a lot of them fun creative games that you can play together online. And I try and make time for the team in every meeting to just talk to each other, because it can be so easy to get caught in this sort of hamster wheel of going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and you're always talking about work, and you never get that chance to stop and just say, like, how are you doing? What's a funny thing that happened to you? And even, I think it's especially as someone in management, it's really important for people who are higher up in the company to build that consideration for employees' mental health into things. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, the other day, our team was working on a mood board in Figma, and someone did a silly drawing, and I jumped in on it as well. And we spent about half an hour just creating this ridiculous anime masterpiece in Figma using the pen tool, and then proudly showed it off to the rest of the crew. And that was a really great spark for everyone to have these kind of collaborative events together where we could just create pointless artworks that were really fun. And so I think for me, maintaining the culture of my design team and making sure that they know that they have that extra time. No one's going to be perfectly efficient when they're in the middle of a crisis like this. People are going to have moments of stress. They're going to have bad days. And building that understanding and empathy into the way that we work together is essential. Otherwise, people are just completely they won't cope. No one could cope.
I think you made two fantastic points there. One, the part about mental health, which I think is extremely important. And I think the longer this goes on, the more seriously we need to think about that. And I think the more optimistic point is around the idea that creativity really can come from anywhere, and that the more liberated you are to play in a Figma and do something wacky, it might lead you to something completely unexpected. And the more regimented that we become by keeping our thinking in a particular way, I worry that could stifle creativity. Zach, do you agree, or is that of a worrying?
Yeah, to piggyback on Sally, I mean, one thing that we have really doubled down on in our company is really building a culture around, connecting people as a remote team. One of the last things we want is for people to feel isolated and feel like they're stuck on this lonely island where they don't know what's going on, they feel lost. And so we do a lot of, just kind of, organizational best practices, like, everyone has a weekly one-on-one with their manager and checks in. We have weekly staff calls and all that sort of thing to keep people plugged into the business. But what's more important to us is, so kind of two things. Over communication is that we're just making sure everyone's in the loop. But the other thing that we invest a lot of time in is having fun, and that's doing things outside of just the regular grind of work. One is that we try to find people who are silly and goofy and don't take themselves too seriously, and have a good sense of humor when we work together. And we think through that, it really lowers a lot of bars and allows people to be their authentic selves and connect as humans, right? And I think that's the key when you're connecting over a screen, is how can you really be your true self and trust, and trust the people you work with and have fun with them. And so, we do a lot of silly things like, virtual happy hours and coffee breaks and book clubs and movie clubs and things like that. And we play role-playing games as a company, and it's all optional, whoever wants to come. But those sorts of things really help people connect, even though they're, maybe thousands of miles away from each other. So that's been something that's worked really well for us, kind of separate the grind from, people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One other tip too. This is a new thing that I started doing a few weeks ago, and I love it. Zoom's great. We use Zoom all the time. One-on-one, go for a walk, grab your headphones, talk. We do have phones. We still have phones. It's really great to have. There's something different about walking outside and talking to someone and having a conversation, and not having to have the screen and the camera on all the time. Try it out. You might love it. It's been really great.
I love that. I need to try that.
I've been doing that with some friends, and you can almost pretend like you're actually out walking with someone, but you're just kind of not looking at them. It's really good.
It's so funny, how technology changed so recently. Everybody's doing FaceTime, and nobody really remembers picking up the phone and just call someone and just hear the voice instead of seeing someone.
And I think someone asked in chat how we can, I think there is a natural tendency to feel, like they said, zoomed out. I think you have to acknowledge that there is something there that maybe the virtual space can't cross, that will always be different to being there in person. And being creative and trying to find those ways that feel a little bit more normal is, I think, the best thing you can do.
Great.
We'll wait for there's the augmented reality where your pupils will always be stuck in the eyes, so there's no awkward drifting.
Yeah.
So before I hand it over in the next 10 minutes or so to Q&A, I wanted to bring it back specifically to design. I've got a whole bunch of questions I wanted to ask, but I think I want to dive in with this one. Is there something in each of your careers that really made you rethink about design, either something that you did or something that inspired you or challenged the way you thought about design? The non-COVID question, finally.
I can go. I think that, I went to design school and started my career with a love of aesthetics and just making beautiful things. And I think, over the course of my career, as I've developed more, just creating things for a lot more people, right? Websites with millions of people and all that. It kind of just changes the lens a bit from making pretty things to making things for people and making things for people that work. And I think that, inherently designers are a bit self-centered and very emotional beings, and we like to create things for ourselves and what we want to see in the world. And I think that there's it's a change in practice that I've had to adapt over the years, is having more of an empathetic view of not just empathy for the users, empathy for all of the users, and not just a user like me, but also empathy for the owners of the business. What are the founders' goals? Am I empathetic to their goals? Am I empathetic to all the other impacts to, this thing that you're putting out there to the world. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's just with my career, right? Like I think about up until about a few years ago, for a long time in my career, I was like so used to being part of a creative process where like a creative team would just get briefed and then we go back to our creative corner and develop our work, right? And then get internal approval from all the creative stakeholders and then present it to our external stakeholders or clients, right? But I feel like these days designers just have such a huge responsibility now because our design is so integrated within the company and within the product visions and business strategies that we need to constantly be collaborating with our stakeholders and product owners. So like, for example, at Shutterstock, right, our product design team, they're set up in pods where the designers are distributed into different product functions within the company, and they sit within their pods and they come up with design strategies with product owners and engineers who are not really designers. And for the creative team, we actually started implemented something called like an inclusive creative process, which we just like constantly are touching base with our stakeholders to review design options and process. This is actually very effective because it just kind of gives the stakeholders a say on the creative outcome, and they feel like they're part of the decision-making process. And that makes it's so much easier for them to just kind of support our creative concept and back our concept in front of executives. And this actually avoid a lot of back and forth and streamline the process a lot for us. And this is something that we're trying out recently for the past few months. And I think that's definitely something that we're going to keep based on how efficient it has been.
Thanks, Flo.
I can talk to it next if you want. I think there was a really brilliant design exercise I did at my previous job at an agency called Today, where I worked with our creative technologists to come up with an idea of what would a user interface be if it weren't graphical. So, there are so many people in the world who can't interact with a graphical user interface because of vision difficulties, because of motor difficulties with the sort of UI inputs. What are the other ways that you could create an operating system or a user input that would utilize other sensors, that would utilize other methods of input? And I really think that is going to be quite critical in design going forward, because you see so many different types of user interfaces and user inputs being developed. Like voice, for instance, is a completely different way of thinking about user interaction and brings completely different accessibility challenges. And I think trying to completely rethink your job from the ground up, like going, what would your job be if you weren't using the visual language that you use every day? How would you help people to do what they needed to do if it wasn't with their eyes? Was a really brilliant challenge that made me think a lot more about being inclusive in design and being creative in design and what the future might hold for product in general. And so for me, that was an exercise that changed a lot about how I thought about product and creativity in design.
That's fascinating. It reminds me of a design meme I saw, I think, a couple of years ago. It was a picture of a footpath going straight, and then a path going to the left at a right angle, and then there was some grass to the left of it. And the meme said something like UX designer's route, which was straight to the left. And then there was a worn path of mud through the grass where people had just cut the corner, and it was like actual human behavior.
Yeah.
Often like things ways, but then people just go in a completely different direction. Chris, what's over the years? What's been something that inspired you or made you think?
Yeah. I don't know if it's one moment, but a thing I think a lot about. We have a great product designer on our team, and one of the things that she said one time was, "Don't be precious." And it spoke to me because the thing I think a lot about, not just in design, but in work in general, there is a certain humility to really, really great work where you put yourself into it, and you're not doing it for your own vanity, and you're not doing it, to focus on yourself. You're doing it to maybe solve a problem, help a customer, whatever it is, it's about the work. It's not about you. And I think that is a great thing. It influences me a lot. It's something I think a lot about. And I hope that's not going anywhere. I think there's a lot of people, even though there's been this incredible, evolution of product design and UX design and all these new tools, and, products are looking more beautiful than ever. Everyone's doing really great work. There are still a lot of people that are untouched by this wave that's been going on the last 10 years or so. There's still a lot of problems to solve. There's still a lot of communities or segments of the economy or different industries that don't have all these great experiences yet, which means they can't do their work as quickly or as effectively or have as much fun and delight while they do it. And so there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think the important thing is to have it be about the work and to keep that really authentic and pure, because at the end of the day, we're all kind of in service to other people. And I hope we can kind of hang on to that, whatever the next wave is.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Very inspiring. So in our other reality, where we're all in a big room somewhere, I'd be looking out to a group of people, and Beth or Kate would be walking over with a microphone to someone, but that's not going to happen anymore. So I have some really interesting questions coming in, and we're in the home straight now of our allotted time. So I'm going to start taking some of these fascinating questions. So the first one is from, I hope I pronounce your name right, sir, Michael Lockshira. And Michael's question is, rethinking our jobs from the ground up is an essential part of what we're all doing now. Here. Besides accessibility, what's the biggest change you will expect in the next few years? Does that make sense? So accessibility is a challenge, but what's the biggest change that we expect in the next few years? Thanks for your question, Michael.
I'll just throw out a quick one. I think migration, right? I think we're just going to see a lot of people spread out all over the world. We're already seeing that here pretty dramatically in San Francisco. Just as people, move home, be closer to family, and just embrace this kind of remote work culture.
Yeah, I'm curious how that's going to change the real estate market. And that's something that I'm constantly thinking about. What's going to happen with the New York City, with all these offices? What are they going to do? I don't really know, but that's definitely something that I'm constantly wondering. But in the design world and in the marketing landscape too, I think e-commerce is going to be huge. I mean, it's already big, but according to some data from Shopify, apparently there was like a 62% jump just from March to April during the COVID lockdown of people creating their online stores. So that's huge. And I think e-commerce is going to lead their economy, which means, again, as I touched on that earlier, there will be an increased demand for great customer experience and digital content creation. So designers are going to be very busy, I think, in my opinion. And then on top of that, we also have streaming businesses that is definitely booming as well. So again, more content that designers are going to have to create. And social media too, that's just a lot of things are happening. But of course, like with social media, Twitter now might be moving to a subscription-based social media plan. So like, what does that mean for the rest of the social media platforms? Is that going to be a start of something different? Is that going to be a start of how people are interacting with social media differently? And what does that mean for advertisers like us, like from a design standpoint? Are we going to be designing differently for social medias and advertising differently? So I think designers are going to be wearing multiple hats at work. Marketers, designers is going to know more about business and business strategies, and product designers obviously are going to be knowing more about engineering and how to develop products. Very exciting time.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to take that question?
I agree with the point about migration. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. And I think another stem of that topic is that I wonder if people are going to start investing more in their personal spaces, and making sure that, if they're working from home, if they're stuck at home, that they've got a good environment to do that creative work or to do work. So that'll be really interesting to keep an eye on. And I also think it'll be interesting, especially for the bigger companies that have invested in those physical spaces. Maybe that just reverts to the mean and that goes back. Or if it doesn't, how are companies going to think about investing in their employees' home spaces, and shifting some of those dollars away from that commercial real estate? It'll be interesting to see if there's trends that develop there.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a thought too. Just Sally, apologize for stealing the mic there.
Oh, good.
But I think there's going to be a massive wave in just entrepreneurship, right? So we've seen, unfortunately, all these layoffs happen, but it's at a time where it's easier than ever to start a business. A lot of businesses, you don't need to, go out and hustle and try to raise VC money to finance it. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of, search and no code tools happening right now where you can, get a great MVP up in front of customers in no time. And then with the remote work opening up kind of the doors to the globe, working with, platforms, like Fiverr, you can build a team to help you, create a business and maybe you don't have to, go job chasing again. You become self-sufficient. So I think that'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Thanks for the plug, Zach. Much appreciated. Sally.
Yep, I think that technological innovations from emerging markets will be really fascinating. If you look at the sort of tech boom in Africa and places that, traditionally haven't been considered to be leading the tech charge, really are in amazing ways. I mean, even 10 years ago, you can look at the development of a product like M-Pesa, which is a mobile banking system that basically, without any branches or central infrastructure, allowed the whole country of Kenya to have access to banking where they may have been entirely dependent on cash before. And it completely revolutionized so many things about the country socially and financially. And that's a product that could only have been developed in that context. And I think that the kind of ideas that are going to come from all different cultures around the world that are emerging into this tech boom are going to blow minds and be amazing.
I could not agree with you more. I think that's so smart. And it's so interesting too, because if you think about, it's not as if countries in parts of the world that are less developed are going to have to go through the linear sequential story that, say, the United States went through of, well, first we develop in this industrial period and then we go to this information period. They get to skip a lot of steps, right? Because they're going to get access to all of that technology. And so I think as investment flows into different parts of the world, you're just going to see these communities come online and just have an explosion of creativity. And as long as hopefully their governments and their institutions support them and give them the freedom to do so. But I think it's going to be, it could be amazing to watch what happens. And the next chapter, as gloomy as things seem right now, and we got our share of challenges, but I really think we've got a shot at seeing something really special happen around the world.
I completely agree, Chris. And I think what you're talking about there is the geographical acceleration of change and missing out is that countries like the UK and the US went through. One of the other changes is normally I would just point to someone in the audience and not know what they're going to ask, but I now have a list of questions, so I get to pre-vet the ones. And there's one specially for you, Sally, from a Nonto. I'm not going to pronounce this right. Nonto Munkwibia. Sorry. Question for Sally: is Canva going to introduce screencasting feature anytime soon? It will be so cool, and we won't mind paying a little extra for it. Well, I won't mind. Sally.
There's probably some stuff I can't talk about for, confidentiality reasons, but I think that's something that a lot of people at Canva are passionate about. So definitely keep an eye out. There's a lot happening I wish I could tell you about all of it.
Nonto, that was definitely a yes, but she can't say it. Let's have a look. Gosh, there's so many great questions here. Let's go to this one from Lena. How do you learn the habit of easily shifting paradigms to be able to better understand your audience and consumers? Can you learn this habit at all, if possible? So yeah, it's basically saying how do you train your brain to understand your audience and consumers and shifting your brain? And then and I think we're pretty much in the home straight. This will probably be our last question.
I can contribute to that. I think as Shutterstock, but also actually everybody here in the panel can probably agree that it's actually quite easy, at least from my personal standpoint, to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of our end users, because our end users ultimately is ourselves at Shutterstock, and we are serving creatives and marketers that are looking to create something amazing. And our library of content is our playground, which makes it really exciting for us. And I think the crucial point really is we really have to get a deep understanding of what our customers are looking for and what they're trying to accomplish, what kind of problems they are trying to solve. And then, of course, we have different segments. What does a enterprise designer look for versus a freelance designer? And what does a small business owner look for versus a social media manager? So all these different nuances we definitely pay close attention to, and we're constantly involving people with different backgrounds that have different expertise and need different things to kind of gather all these user testing to really create a good product and campaign that really resonate with our users.
Okay.
Yeah, I also would just chime in. It is very easy, right? And I think that it's easy to talk one-on-one with our users and get feedback. But I think for designers to get outside of the comfort zone of maybe that one-to-one user feedback and go to the support team. What's happening in support? What are people asking about? What's breaking for them? Go to the analytics team. Find out what all of the users are doing at a macro level. There's all these different signals that you could pull in to get information about how our users are using the product and to guide you. So I think it's the more you can kind of take a well-rounded view of all the different channels and signals within the business, the better product you can build for your users.
Thank you, Zach. Chris, you want to go?
Yeah, I echo all that. It's empathy at the end of the day. I mean, we spend an awful lot of time thinking about our customers and our shop community, and walking in their shoes and going back to solving problems. That's what it's about. And I really think if you've kind of got whatever your role is, whatever you're doing, if you've got your product in your mind and your team in your mind, just kind of have it rolling around in your head all day and thinking about things, you just get it into your bloodstream, and it does change. The market's always changing, the customers are changing, but you can kind of keep them with you all the time. And then the next challenge is, as you build that habit as an individual, how do you bring that habit to the people around you? And how do you build that into your culture of thinking about your customers and your product all the time? And it's just a muscle to strengthen, just like, getting really good at working remote and over communicating. It's all things that you can develop over time if you just kind of keep it with you every day.
All right.
Yeah. And I think, being a product designer or being involved in product research, in a lot of ways, you are the voice of users to other stakeholders a lot of the time, and finding really great ways to not just present your insights back as coming from you, but to use recordings, make the users real to everyone else in your company is a really great skill to develop. And it's a really great skill to help you support more user-centric design decisions. If you can sort of make that user pain, make those user passions real to the rest of your company through presenting them really well, that's an awesome thing you can do for better product design.
Thank you. I'm feeling the gentle hand of our community team ushering us gently off the stage. So I'm going to wrap this up now, much to their relief, as I see the next speakers are ready to come on stage. Some really fascinating insights. I think, to sum it up, I'd say that whilst it's a kind of slightly terrifying world we live in, there's a lot of optimism I'm feeling coming from everyone. I think some great notes about making sure we take care of ourselves and each other and the mental health stakes, and that remote working pre-COVID and remote working COVID are not necessarily the same things. I love the idea about separating ourselves from looking into the screen the whole time, and then having time to be less focused on work and play in the Figma thing that you were talking about, Sally. I really like that point. And then I think at a macro level, one of the things that really inspired me in this conversation is thinking about how these changes can help accelerate positive change in other parts of the world and bring, hopefully, society together more apart, as we've seen in certain parts of the world over recent months. So thanks everyone for your time. It's been a fascinating discussion. Hopefully at some point we may even meet in person. But until then, thanks from everyone at Fiverr. Thanks for joining the shift. It's a completely new idea for us, and obviously for our company, the changes that are happening, we're doing all of the things that you've all been talking about. And I kind of wanted to jump in, but I'm not a panelist, I'm the moderator. So thank you very much. And what do I do now, Beth? Just press leave. Oh,
Yes, yeah, you guys can go ahead and
thank you everyone for
take
listening.
off.
Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
See you later.
Cheerio.
Bye. All right. Thank you guys so much. That was amazing. I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too.